Now to a troubling development here at home. A person who calls 911 generally expects someone to pick up instantly, but CBC News has learned last year that's often not the case in Toronto. In fact, it's quite common to be put on hold, sometimes for several minutes before the call is answered. Now, newly obtained documents are shedding light on whether the situation is improving. The CBC's Angelina King has been looking into it. She joins us now live. So, Angelina, what have you found?
Unfortunately, we found that things actually have been getting worse. Sometimes in Toronto, when people call 911, they can be waiting on hold for as long as 10 minutes. So we did this investigation more than a year ago. We were looking at how long people wait on hold, how often that happens. We wanted to see whether things improved. So we filed a Freedom of Information request after that initial investigation to get wait time data for all of 2022. So when we compared the data from 2021, we were able to obtain 6 months of that data. When we compared those 6 months from 2021 to 2022, we found that each month the wait time increased. Sometimes it doubled. In one instance, it was 5 times longer. That new data also showed us the day with the longest average wait time last year. That was on October 30th. So people who were calling 911 in Toronto on that day were waiting on hold for an average of 6 minutes and 28 seconds before somebody just answered their 911 call. I actually spoke with somebody who happened to call on that day. His name is Brett House. He says that he was outside. He saw a man having a physical and mental health crisis on the street. He felt that the person needed help right away, so he called 911. He says that he waited on hold for longer than 5 minutes.
5 minutes is an excruciating amount of time, and then add on the urgency of someone clearly being in distress, and 5 minutes feels like an eternity. It was really concerning to have such a long wait time on 911, which we expect to be the most immediate and reliable response for times of problems in the city. And 911 needs to be one of the backstops that we have for people who don't have other supports to ensure that they get access to the services they need. And if 911 isn't there, then it's not clear that we have any safety net.
So then, Angelina, what sort of rules or guidelines is there to set a standard on when you need to be picking up that 911 call, how quickly it needs to be answered?
Well, in Ontario, that actually doesn't exist. So some provinces, Alberta and Quebec are examples. There is a legislated mandate, but here in Ontario, there isn't anything like that. There is a voluntary national standard that Toronto, as well as other 911 centers across the country, try and meet. So that standard is that 90% of all 911 calls are answered within 15 seconds. But that data that we obtained shows that that only happened on 11 days last year in Toronto. Now, I spoke with the board president of an organization that's kind of made up of public safety communication officials. He says that 911 centers across the country are all dealing with really similar issues, especially in light of the pandemic, things like a lack of staffing, lack of resources, mental health issues. He says in Ontario specifically, having that provincially legislated standard would really make a big difference.
We would be very supportive of provincial standards. And we wouldn't just be supportive of provincial standards when it comes to call answering times, but there should be some minimum standards for training. There should be some minimum standards for call answer times. There should be minimum standards for dispatch times.
So the wait time issue here in Toronto has really been a big concern for a while now. It actually prompted the city's Auditor General to look into it. So in June, she released a report that found that the call volume coupled with a lack of staffing or not enough staff is really kind of at the heart of these wait times. So she made 26 recommendations in her report. Of course, one of them was a minimum standard staffing, but an interesting one I want to tell you about is a 911 levy. So that's a small tax to be implemented. And interestingly enough, Manitoba and Ontario are the only two provinces that don't have that monthly 911 levy. Now, when it comes to what Toronto Police are doing, they're the ones that oversee the 911 center here. They say that they're doing everything they can to try and implement those recommendations. They blame the wait times on a lack of staffing and resources and say that they're aggressively trying to improve it. In this budget for this year, back in January, January, Toronto's police chief was really pushing for more funding for 911, and since that budget's been approved, Toronto Police have told us that it's currently hiring more full-time staff for the 911 center, but training for that takes about a year.
Some really troubling findings there. Thank you, Angelina. That is the CBC's Angelina King in Toronto.